one of the longest conversations we've been trying to address recently, a few people have come to me and otherwise, is the issue of like immigration and working on like visa and working on like permanent residency, that type of thing. So we're very honored that Abdallah agreed to be with us today and kind of share on that. Okay, so Abdallah is just gonna start this presentation off. He has his own presentation ready, and he's just gonna address the different needs, just on like working, studying, permanent residency, and he'll start off with a little bit by himself. So those who don't know, Abdallah is like a fully certified lawyer in Toronto. He works for AAA law firm. He doesn't just do immigration, he does litigation as well as family law, which is very good. You guys should check him on Instagram, and he also has a website as well. He's trained in law and economics, but he's more worried about like focusing on the individual and how helping an individual like achieve what they need to achieve and like start their own organization, that type of thing. So not just like your typical lawyer working like big companies, but he's more worried about the individual. So which is really good because that's kind of what CARY is about as well. Yeah, so without further ado, Abdallah, if you would like to kind of introduce yourself and start your presentation, we're very happy to have you here.
Thank you so much, Joshua. I was just wondering if you guys are going to share the presentation, or should I just run through the presentation here on my screen? Is that?
If you can run through the presentation on your end, I think.
Okay. All right. Sorry, I'm disabled with the screen sharing, so I can't share my screen.
You are the host now. You're a host. You can't share it now. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, technology. I'm still trying to learn this Zoom thing. Okay. There we go. Okay. Okay. Okay, do you guys see that?
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right. So as Joshua has said, my name is Abdallah, and I'm happy to be here today to try to decipher this immigration thing. You know, Canadian immigration can be complicated, but once you find out what exactly you want to do, the process of doing it is not as cumbersome as a lot of people think. And hopefully, once I go through the different options you have to come to Canada, either to stay temporarily or permanently, then you can kind of choose the right route that you want, and then I can kind of work through the different options for you, right? So in Canada, most people, the most prominent ways that a lot of people come to Canada is through either temporary residence or permanent residence, right? So so what I'll do is I'll run through those two different ways and what each one entails, and then at that point you can kind of see the different routes that you have available to you. So can everybody see this, or should I do it as a full screen? Just let me know if it's good.
You can make it as a full screen.
Full screen? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that. Okay. Okay. Does everybody see everything now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right. Okay, so with the temporary residence, there's three types of temporary residence. So either you can come to Canada as a visitor through a visitor visa, or you can come through as on a work permit, or the last thing is a student visa. So depending on what you want to do when you are in the country, you can choose one of these to come here on a temporary basis. So the whole point of this is that it has to be for a certain period of time, and you have to prove to the government that once that period is done, that you are willing to go back to the country that you're coming from. So with a visitor visa, again, if you're to be eligible for that, you have to be of sound health, have no criminal or immigration-related convictions. You have to have ties to your home country that you prove that you can go back, right? And you have to have sufficient funds. So if you just want to come visit Canada, those are the things that you have to take into consideration. Or if you have family that wants to come visit here, you have to make sure that in their application, they can show that they have something in back home that they were willing to go to. So If they have a family back home, then that's best to show that, okay, that family, that obviously if someone has children and a wife back home, or children and a husband, or just children, or whatever the case is, they are going to go back to their family, obviously, once they're done their time in Canada. Or if, let's say, they have an established business over there, or let's say they have a lot of money tied up in properties, etc. So there has to be something you have to show when you come here on a temporary basis for you to be eligible to get that temporary permit. Now, a work permit is something that you look for if you want to come here to work. And a lot of times when someone is coming to Canada on a work permit, it's either through something called an LMIA approved work permit, which is essentially called a labor market impact assessment work permit. So with that, what it is, if a company in Canada wants to hire anybody that is a foreign national, they have to first get something called a labor market impact assessment. And that labor market impact assessment, right, what it is that they have to show, okay, I've tried to find someone in Canada who is a permanent resident or a citizen, and I haven't been able to find them. So now I'm looking to hire a foreign national who can fit that role. So that has to go and it has to be approved. And then once that is approved, then they can make that offer, job offer to a foreign national. And then that foreign national can then use that to apply for a work permit to come to Canada. So and for that, for you to be able to be approved for a work permit, again, you have to make sure you don't have any health issues that are usually they look at things, illnesses that are like contagious illnesses. And then another thing is you have to make sure you have no criminal convictions, and you have to also show again that once you're done your work permit period, that you are able to go back to your country, or that you will be willing to go back to wherever you are coming from. I know one thing that you folks had wanted me to discuss was what options people have once they're done their studies. So a postgraduate work permit is one of the main ways that a lot of people that come to Canada end up being permanent residents. So they come to Canada through a student visa, and then if you study for at least 8 months in Canada, you are eligible to get the postgraduate work permit. So, but the caveat to that is that if you study for less than 12 months, you're only able to get a work permit for the months that you studied for. So if you only studied for 9 months, you're only eligible to get a work permit for 9 months. If you study for 12 months, you're able to get a work permit for 12 months, right? If you do study for at least 2 years, so 24 months, right? If your program is a 24 months program, then what they do is that they give you a 3-year postgraduate work permit. I always recommend to people, if you're gonna come study in Canada, make sure your program is at least 24 months, because you're able to get 3 years to get the requisite 12 months to be eligible for the Canadian Experience class. So if you are interested to stay in Canada past your studies, it is very important to get a study permit that is at least 24 months. Now, if you get a study permit that's less than 24 months, let's say it's 13 months or 14 months or 15 months, you're only eligible for a postgraduate work permit for that number of months, right? So I don't recommend that, because if you want the Canadian Experience class, to be eligible for the Canadian Experience class route to permanent residency, you need to have at least 12 months of NOC 0A or B positions to be able to be eligible for permanent residence. You might ask, what's NOC 0A or B? So NOC 0A or B are positions that are something that are, for example, a professional position, or for example, if you're working as a manager or an assistant manager, it has to be a job which is an upper tier job. So something, for example, that's if you're in retail and you're just a retail associate, someone, for example, at the floor level, then that wouldn't be eligible. That would be considered NOC C, right? So not NOC 0A or B, right? So NOC 0 are professionals, NOC A's are usually managers and high level employees, right? The NOC B are kind of like mid-tier employees. So if, for example, you finish your studies and you only come here to study for 12 months, right? And then you get, right after school, you're not able to get a NOC 0A or B position, then you're not going to be eligible for the postgrad. You're not going to be eligible to get permanent residence because you are not going to get the requisite amount of months to be able to work and get your eligibility, right? So you have to make sure that you're gonna get enough months to get that Canadian experience class path, right? So always, if you want to study here, if for example you are here only for 12 months, try to see if you can apply for an extension of your student visa. So try to see if you can apply for a certificate after your 12-month studies. Let's say a 6-month certificate, then that gives you 18 months. And then when you're done, you get an 18 months postgraduate work permit. And then you can, whenever you're able to find a job in that, so you have kind of like a buffer of 6 months to be able to find a job that gets you the right kind of experience to get the Canadian experience class. If anyone has questions, they can ask me about that later. But that's a really important part of what a work permit is, okay? And obviously a student visa, if you want to come here to study, same thing. You have to make sure you have no criminal record, that you are of sound health, right? You're willing to leave the country once you're done, right? And that you have sufficient funds. In regards to sufficient funds, it all depends on what you want to do. So if you're coming here on a work permit, you don't have to show sufficient funds because you're coming here to work, right? If you're coming for a visitor visa, you just have to show that you're able to pay for your, for your travels and your hotel stay and your minimum expenses. If you're coming here on a student visa, usually if it's one person, it's about $10,000, and then you also have to be able to show that you can pay at least your first year of your tuition. Okay, so that's kind of like all the temporary residence. Now, permanent residence is essentially when you're able to stay in Canada on a permanent basis, right? And you get all the rights of a Canadian except for voting federally, right? I believe you can vote provincially and municipal. I know you can vote on the municipal elections. Provincially and federally, you might not have that right. Don't quote me on that right now. But as a permanent resident, you get the health care. You get to, if you want to study, you get the tuition fees similarly to what a Canadian would get, right? And you're able to come in and out of Canada, without any worries, right? One thing is with a permanent residence is you also can't be in the army, right? And that sort of thing as well. So permanent residence has a lot of benefits to it, because obviously if you're a permanent resident in Canada, you also get the added, bonus of if, let's say, I don't know, you're stuck somewhere, you get the Canadian government willing to come and help you out, right? So that's also a benefit as well. So the two routes that are two most prominent routes that people use to get permanent residence in Canada is through the express entry route and through sponsorships. So I've discussed one route, which is a Canadian experience class, that a lot of students choose to stay in Canada and get their PR. That route is through the express entry system. So express entry is a system that the government created actually pretty recently. And it's a way to streamline everybody who is, I want to say, an educated or a high-skilled individual to come to Canada. So if you're a high-skilled and educated person and who has the necessary funds, what you do is you put your profile up on the express entry system. So on the express entry system, you submit your education, you submit your work history, you submit what languages you can speak and understand, etc. Usually you have to do an English and a French exam. And if you are proficient in both of those or one of those, then you get more points, right? So the express entry route is a way to streamline the process for high-skilled individuals who come to Canada. Canada is known to be a country that likes high-skilled individuals. And you can have your opinion about that, but that's the society that we live in, is that they choose to have more people come and immigrate here that are high-skilled. So whenever they try to, they will have more positions or within their immigration quota, they will have more positions allocated to express entry. So one of the main ways a lot of people come, as I mentioned, is that they come from a student visa, then they get their 12 months of experience at NOC 0A or B, and then at that point, they're eligible for the Canadian experience class, as long as obviously they have no criminal conviction and they don't have any believe it's communicable diseases, which are diseases that can be spread like viruses, to take care of them and take them around everywhere they go, etc. Right? I had to argue against that, and I mentioned that, hey, you cannot discriminate against someone who has a disability, because just because someone is blind doesn't mean they can't comb their own hair, they can't put on their shoes, they can't take trips on their own. That's just not true, right? This individual was doing all of that, right? So you can't sit and say and discriminate against them. So I was able to win that argument on that basis. So if you have a non-communicable disease, like such as heart disease, or let's say, or some other type of disease that's non-communicable, then you have a route to be able to stay even though you have health issues. But if you do have something that is called a communicable disease, which are, I believe, considered like viruses, then it's going to be hard for you to stay in the country or immigrate here. Okay, so as long as you get enough points within the express entry system, so you're proficient in English or in French or both, you have enough work experience, and you have education, at least a bachelor's degree, then you could be eligible to get a permanent residence that way. Now, another route that people get permanent residence is sponsorship. So if you have family here, your parents, let's say, and you're a foreign national, they can sponsor you as a child, right? Or if you get married here, you can have your you can sponsor your spouse, right? Or for example, if you are here on your own and you have no family here, you have no spouse, then you can also sponsor your brother or sister, but you have to prove that you have no one here, you have no family here. But usually it's quite difficult to sponsor like siblings. So they always ask you, do you have a spouse? Do you have children? Do you have parents? And if you have those three, you cannot sponsor your sibling, right? So you have to try to sponsor them first before you go to your sibling, right? So I've gone through express entry. Again, they look at nationality, age, language ability, education, your family members, your work experience, details of any job offer or provincial nomination, right? And then I went through the spousal sponsorship. Again, you can, through the sponsorship, so it can be through a spousal, parent and grandparent sponsorship, as a child sponsorship. And if you want to sponsor someone, you have to be a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident. You have to be at least 18 years of age. You have to prove that you're not on social assistance. And you have to prove that you can meet at least your basic needs, and you can meet the basic needs of the person you're sponsoring. Another route that someone can become a permanent resident is if they apply to get convention refugee status or person in need of protection, okay? So convention refugees are either people who have been allocated or who have received that status through the United Nations, or they have some grounds of that they can claim that they have a well-founded fear on. So either they have a well-founded fear of prosecution based on race, religion, political opinion, or nationality. And if you can fear based on any of those, then you can be considered a convention refugee, right? A person needed of protection is someone who, for example, in their home country, there's some sort of turmoil that is not letting them go back to that country, right? And maybe if they go back, there's a danger of torture, or maybe they might be killed, or they might get, there might be some sort of cruel and unusual treatment that they may receive when they do go back. So then you can receive person in need of protection status in Canada. If you are eligible for any of these two statuses, right away, once you've received your status, you can apply for permanent residence as well. Okay. Now, if all fails, let's say you've come into Canada, you studied, but let's say you only get a 12-month postgraduate work permit, and you only get 10 months of NOC 0A or B experience. Okay. Or let's say for some reason you get some sort of criminal conviction. Or let's say you end up with some sort of virus while you're in Canada and you have a communicable disease, right? There is the last option in Canada, they have something called humanitarian and compassionate grounds of permanent residence. And what this is, it's very discretionary on whoever the immigration officer who's looking at your application. And they look at different factors, right? So they look at, for example, how long have you been established in Canada? What's your level of education? Do you, for example, volunteer in the community? So what type of, would you give back in the community? What is your integration in the community? Have you established yourself in Canada where you've bought property? Do you have a lot of family here? Have you married here? You know, do you have children? Right? Let's say there's something going back in your home country and there's no way you can go back over there for a certain reason, right? So they look at all of these factors. It's very discretionary, right? And they only consider this on an exceptional situation or on an exceptional basis. So if all fails, you can apply for humanitarian and compassionate grounds. But if you want to apply for HNC, you better make sure that you have a lot of proof to show that you have a lot of establishment in Canada and that your situation is exceptional. So it is something that is very hard to get, but not impossible. So those are kind of like all of the routes that a lot of people take to come to Canada or stay in Canada once they're here. So I mean, if anyone has any questions, I mean, they can visit my social media on Instagram, Twitter. I believe those are all of the ones that at the moment we have. You can follow AAA Law CA, so AAA Law CA, or you can visit my website, give me a call or email me. At the moment, we don't do any visitations at the office because of COVID, but if you do want to set up an appointment after all the COVID is done, you're always more than welcome to visit the office as well. So, and then lastly, I just wanted to mention to people that we have an event on February 18th at 6 p.m. If you wanna, we're doing an event for Black History Month. So if you wanna come to that event, I'll be having a panel of different lawyers discuss different areas of law, like family law, criminal law, right? And also we might discuss also immigration as well further. So if you want to learn more about different areas of law and how those lawyers are able to get within their profession into those areas, I believe this might be an event that you also might want to join. So if you visit our social media, you can join and register for that event. All right.
Thank you, Abdallah, for the wonderful presentation. There are some questions here, and I'll let me read them for you.
Mm-hmm.
One question in the chat is, someone said that is HIV/AIDS a communicable disease?
Yeah, yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Okay. Another question is, if you have no one here,
similar to sponsoring a spouse or a parent or a child, you just got to fill out the appropriate forms and do it. Again, as long as that person doesn't have any criminal conviction and that person doesn't have any communicable diseases, right? And then lastly, you also have to be prepared to take care of all of their basic needs once they arrive. So if you have all those things, then you can, apply, use the appropriate forms and apply to sponsor them.
Awesome. Another question is, someone has said that, speak more about how to obtain a PR after you get your postgraduate work permit.
Sorry, speak more about how to what?
Speak more about how to get you, how to obtain your PR, permanent residence.
Oh, okay.
After you get your postgraduate work permit.
Sure. Okay. So as I mentioned, it all starts with your student permit. So as long as your student permit gives you enough months on your postgraduate work permit to be able to receive 12 months, then you should be fine. one of the critical things you need is you need to make sure you have at least 12 months or the equivalent of 12 months of work experience to be eligible for the Canadian Experience class. So once you, right before you're done your studies, so 3 months prior to your studies being done, you got to make sure you start applying for your postgraduate work permit. Okay, so you got to apply for your postgraduate work permit within 180 days of either receiving your marks or receiving your graduation, whichever comes first. So if you receive your marks prior to your graduation, you got to make sure you apply within 180 days of that date, okay, of your postgraduate work permit. So if your postgraduate work permit is more than 12 months, that's great. Then you just got to make sure you find a job that is either considered NOC 0, okay, NOC. When I say NOC, I mean NOC, NOC 0, NOC A, or NOC B, okay? You might ask, how do I know if my job is within any of those? If you Google NOC 0, NOC A, or NOC B, you should be able to find it, okay? I believe it's called the National Occupancy Classification. That's what NOC stands for. So if you search NOC 0, you will get a list of jobs that are considered NOC 0. Again, they're usually professional jobs like teachers, engineers, lawyers, etc. Okay. NOC A are usually like managers, right, or people I believe that are in the financial industry, and NOC B are like assistant managers or that sort of mid-tier professions or jobs. So at least get an assistant manager position somewhere, even if it's at Pizza Hut or anywhere. You can't be a sales associate. You have to get an assistant manager position. And you have to maintain that position, NOC 0A or B, for at least 12 months straight. So if you get a break between, if let's say you get a job and you only work there for 6 months and then you get a break between of 1 month, that's not good. You have to make sure you have a continuous employment of NOC 0A or B for 12 months to be eligible for the Canadian Experience class. So once you get your 12 months, let's say you're on a 3-year postgraduate work permit, but you get a job right away once you're done your studies and you're done your 12 months, you should apply for your permanent residence right away, right? And at that point, you just got to prove that you have sufficient funds or you have a job still, right? You also have to show that you have no communicable disease, and you also have to do your English or French exam or both, and you have to get the right marks. And then you put all that information into the Express Entry profile. As long as you have about 450 points, you should be able to get an invitation to apply.
Okay. So another question is, good. Where do you get the forms to apply?
So the beautiful thing about immigration is that everything is online, right? So if you go to the IRCC website, right, you can find everything. And if I can figure a way of how to get out of here, okay, let me end this show. Let's say I go to second, sorry. Let me just go to IRCC. Okay. 1 second. Okay, so if you go to the IRCC website, if you Google IRCC and you get to this website, usually you can find everything that you're looking for. So if you scroll down here, let's say you wanna come on a visitor visa, you click visit, or if you wanna immigrate, if you wanna work, study, or if you wanna do citizenship, refugees, everything is on here. Once you click, or let's say you want to do your Canadian Experience class permanent residence, just search Canadian Experience class, okay? You will go, the first thing that will pop up, you can click on that. Then once you get here, right, is you can look through all of this, right? And then you can see, okay, what are the next steps? You get your documents ready, okay? And then they will tell you, see, you use this form, you use this form, you click on the form, and then you can get it. So just Google what you want to do, and usually the first link will be there, and then they'll give you step by step of how to do it.
Good, thanks. Many questions. Another question. Hi. So let me not go into hi there. Let me just go straight to the question.
Okay.
When do you get a student permit and when do you get a work permit? I guess it's.
It depends. If you can get a job in Canada that is an LMIA approved job, a labor market impact assessment job offer, then you can come to Canada right away on a work permit. But if you don't have that, then you have to come through as a student first, and you just gotta make sure you get an approval from a college or something, and then you can apply for a student permit.
Yeah, good. Talk more on the provincial nominee and the federal government nominee. Which one is faster for a person living in Ontario?
I don't believe that there is a federal nomination. There are provincial nomination programs. So each province has an ability to nominate you as someone that they would like to come to their province. And what that does is that it gives you 600 points. So as I mentioned before, usually 450 points is what you need to get an invitation to apply for permanent residence through the express entry. So if you get a provincial nomination, you're automatic able to get that invitation to apply, right? Now, for you to be able to get a provincial nomination, usually each province has something that they need. So Ontario has, for example, a program for people who are in tech, right? So people who are programmers, etc. We have a deficiency in workers in that area in this province. So you can apply for a nomination from the province of Ontario if you are in that field, and you can get a provincial nomination. And once you get that provincial nomination, then you can submit that into your express entry profile, and then you get the points that you need to be able to get the permanent residence invitation to apply.
Good. How much time do you have to find that job after getting the work permit?
Sorry, I just wanted to finish off. I think the second part of the last question was which route is better, right?
Yeah.
What I would say is it all depends on your situation. So not all situations are the same, because some people, they have enough points to get they have enough work experience, education, and their language proficiency is really good for English and French, and they can get 450 points very easily. And then obviously at that point, you don't need a provincial nomination. It's very quick. You just apply through express entry and you're good. But if you're deficient, let's say in your language speaking or writing skills, etc., or you don't have enough education, or you don't have enough work experience, then you want to try to see if you can get the provincial nomination. So it all depends on the situation, right? Then your next question was, how long do you have to look for a job?
Yes, so how much time do you have to find that job and getting the work permit?
So if you do get the postgraduate work permit, it is a work permit which is an open work permit. So you can work for anybody and anyone. You can even work at McDonald's flipping burgers on a postgraduate work permit, right? But obviously, if you work at McDonald's flipping burgers as just an associate at McDonald's, you're not going to get the 12 months experience that you need for your Canadian experience class eligibility, right? Yeah. So if let's say your postgraduate work permit, let's say your studies were only 12 months, and the day after you're done school, you're not working in a NOC 0A or B position, then you are, for a lack of better word, screwed. You're not going to be eligible for Canadian experience class PR eligibility, right? So you have to make sure you're starting to look for a job before you're done your studies, and you have to make sure that job fits into NOC 0A or B, right? Even if you have even if you're going to be eligible for, let's say, an 18-month postgraduate work permit, or even if your studies are 2 years and you're eligible for the 3-year postgraduate work permit, doesn't mean that you can slack off and say, okay, I'm gonna flip burgers for 6 months and then I'm gonna look for a job, because you don't know what's gonna happen. What if we get another pandemic like what happened now, right? And let's say you said, oh, I'm just gonna flip burgers for 6 months, And then afterwards, I'm going to find a job. Let's say something happens, you're not able to find a job. Then you're not in a good position, right? So I always implore people, even if you have a 3-year postgraduate work permit, look for a job that is NOC 0A or B right away. Or look for a job where the route to get a NOC 0A or B position is quite high within a 2-year period, right? So if you go into sales, just make sure you talk to your manager and be like, hey, if I'm a sales associate, can I get an assistant manager position, right, within the next year? Because if you do get that, then you're fine. You get a NOC B position, and then you can apply for your permanent residence, right, once you get 12 months.
Cool. I hope it sinks. Another thing, this is a question. And I think a lot to work when you don't have a work permit yet. Are you allowed to, you don't have a work permit yet?
Okay, so you are eligible to work on a student visa, not on a visitor visa. You are able to work when you have a student visa, but it's all dependent on how many hours they give you on your student permit, right? So some student permits, for example, some people come to Canada and they do a program which has a work component, right? So you have to do some sort of co-op for 6 months for your studies, okay? So when you're applying for your student visa, you have to make it very clear that you have a co-op component of your studies. And then at that point, the immigration officer will write on your student visa how many hours you're able to work, okay? And when you're able to work. Usually though, you are allowed to work up to 20 hours per week on a student visa while you're studying. And then if you're not studying, let's say on your breaks, holiday breaks, you can work up to 40 hours just like anyone, right? On a student visa. But I would always recommend, always check on your student permit and it will state very clearly how many hours you can work.
Wonderful. Next question says, any steps to make easier and faster your visa application when you are not in Canada?
Any way that you can fast track your applications, I would say if you have to make sure you submit everything the first time, okay? Because if you're applying for a student permit and you forget a document, they're gonna just deny you. And then you have to pay for everything again and submit everything again and wait another 2-3 months, all right? So be very diligent by going through the checklists, right? As I mentioned to you before, if you go on this website, okay, let's just say a study permit.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, if you go here, okay, you can apply, let's say you apply online for, 1 second, sorry. Okay, you want to apply online for a study work permit. Okay, you get here. Okay, they give you step by step what documents you need. Make sure you get these ready before you even start applying. Okay, make sure you check the eligibility of how you can apply, right? Make sure you read this very thoroughly and you meet all of these things. Okay, make sure once you've gotten here and they've told you what type of forms, let's say you're applying outside Canada, let's say it's on paper, okay? Okay, you select your country, let's just say Angola, okay? This is an example. Oh, sorry, I don't know what's happening. Let me just choose Rwanda. Let's see, okay? Let's just do this here. Let's go to Rwanda. Rwanda, okay, continue. Okay, maybe too many people are trying to get the forms. But essentially, once you click that, you select the country, they will give you a list of the forms that you need. Make sure you go through those forms, okay? There's usually a checklist where you have to go through that checklist. Make sure you get all of those documents ready, okay? And make sure you submit them when you are submitting your form. Be very diligent. Even if it takes you 2 months to submit your application, take your time, okay? Because if you miss even one date on the application, they will return your application, they will take your money, and then now you got to do the whole process again. So just be very diligent and make sure you go online and you read all of this. Make sure you read this whole thing before you actually apply. Okay.
Okay, so yeah, there are a lot of questions. So what's the time frame from finishing postgraduate school and getting your PR?
Once you get your 12 months of NOC 0A or B position, you are eligible to apply for the Canadian Experience class. Okay. So if let's say you start in a engineering position from the day you finish school,
yeah.
Once you hit 12 months, the day after, you can apply and put up an express entry profile. And you can, once you put up an express entry profile, if let's say you receive 460 points within usually 2 weeks, because every 2 weeks they do a draw and send out invitations to apply for permanent residence. So once you submit that profile, if you have like, let's say more than 490 points, you're gonna most likely be invited to apply within 2 weeks. Once you get your invitation, then you just submit all the documents and then you're good.
Just a follow-up. Is it automatic that when you are invited, you just get it?
No, you don't. No, it's not guaranteed that you will receive permanent residence. Yeah,
okay.
You have to make sure that you are truthful in your express entry profile. So what I always recommend to people is if they want to go through the Canadian Experience class route, make sure you do your English or French exam, okay? So while you are working in your NOC 0A or B position, okay, and again, you have to make sure you check online, okay? So you just type in NOC A positions, okay? Let's just say you go there. You go to find your NOC, okay? So again, they list out what are NOC 0 positions, okay? Management jobs. NOC A are usually professional jobs, right? NOC B are technical jobs, okay? Or skilled trades, etc. But also assistant managers fall within the level B, okay? And if you go to here and you put your position, let's just say you are assistant manager, okay? You type it in. They will tell you what NOC you fall under, okay? So if you're 1, usually that's A, okay? If you're 3, that's usually B. I mean C, okay? Right? So you have to, I believe this one is NOC, I believe this is NOC 0, okay? If you see a 1. If you see a 2 is NOC A, but if you click the job, let me just see here. Oh, sorry, on this side, it'll tell you, right? What NOC level it is, okay? So once you know that your job fits that description, okay? Sometimes let's say you don't know what NOC level you are. What you can do is if you copy this number, okay? Okay, and then you go on Google and you say NOC and you paste that number, okay? If you click that, okay, what it does is that it takes you to this website, okay? And it'll give you the main duties of the position, okay? Even if your job is not, the job level is like on your let's say your position is not called executive assistant, okay? But let's say you're just, I don't know, corporate assistant, okay? If you come here and you look at your job description and it fits all of these things, then you are considered an executive assistant. So sometimes the job name, right, the position name is not what you'll find on the NOC list. So what you have to do is look at the duties, and as long as you meet the duties, or as long as your place where you work, they put down that you have done these duties. So literally, you tell your manager, please write me a letter that says I have done these duties. Can you please copy and paste this on my letter or my job letter and tell me I've done these duties? And regardless of what the job title is, if you've done these duties, then you meet this NOC level, right? So as long as you meet that, then you and you've done that for 12 months. Sorry, I forgot the question. I believe you asked.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was the question again? Sorry.
The question was what's the time frame of getting from finishing your postgraduate school and getting your PR?
Yeah, okay. So like I said, so as long as you meet those, as long as you have a NOC 0A or B position, again, you have to make sure you look at this NOC and you see that you fit those details. As long as you meet that after 12 months, and within that 12 months, let's say you go and do your language exams and you get, for English exams, you get above 7.5. And for your French exams, you just make sure you gotta get a really high number. And as long as you meet that, then what you can do is you can do, you can check how many points that you get, right? So what you do is you go to the CRS calculator, okay? The Comprehensive Ranking System Calculator, okay? So let's say you're working your position, you've done your English, you've done your language exams, and let's say you've done your studies in Canada, okay? Let's say you have a bachelor's degree or a master's degree, okay? Then right away you can put up an express entry profile right away after the 12 months in your position. If, for example, you have not got your studies in Canada, you need to go do an education assessment. You go to a website called WES.org, which is the World Education Service. You have to submit your foreign credentials, and they will say whether your credentials are a bachelor's, master's, etc. Once you've done an education assessment, once you've done your English or French exams, and once you finish your 12 months, you can create your express entry profile. Before you create the express entry profile, I would recommend for you to go and do this, which is called the CRS tool or the calculator. If you go down here, you can see that you can put down what you are. Let's say you are never married, you're single. You put how old you are. Let's say you're 21. You put what education in Canada you have. Okay, let's just say you have a master's degree. Okay, you entered. Have you earned a degree in a Canadian degree? You can say yes. Okay, you have a degree or diploma. Okay, your English exams, at least, are they 2 years old? Okay, if they are, then they're eligible. Let's just say you've done your English exam, which are called the IELTS. Let's say you receive at least 7.5. Okay, you put all of that in here. Okay, and let's just say you didn't do any French exams, but if you did, you would also put them in too. Okay, say not applicable. Then you write your experience. So do you have a NOC 0A or B, and how long? Let's just say you've done 1 year, 12 months. In the last total years, how many foreign work? A lot of students usually don't have any work experience abroad. Okay, that's considered skilled work. Skilled work is NOC 0A or B. Okay, do you have a qualification from a Canadian body? So let's say if you're an engineer and you have your engineering certificate, or if let's say you're a plumber and you got your plumbing certificate, if you have that, then you can put that in here. But let's just say this person says no. Then they ask you, do you have a job offer? If you have a job offer, yes, you get additional points. If no, you say no. Do you have a nomination certificate? No. Okay. Do you have a spouse? A lot of you maybe might not be married yet. You say no. Then you say calculate my score. When you put that down, right, they will give you a score at the bottom. So someone with that profile that we just said right there, who has a master's degree, who's finished at least 12 months in Canada, who has no work experience abroad, and who's not married, would receive 487 points. And with 487 points, I can almost guarantee you that in 2 weeks, you'll get an invitation to apply, right? So, but for you to be able to know how many points you have to have already done an education assessment if you only have foreign credentials, or you have to have your certificate from Canada, either your master's or bachelor's, and you have to have already done your English or French exams. Because if you go in here and let's say you put this because you think, oh, my English is amazing, I'm going to give myself the highest scores in English or French, and you go and you do your IELTS exam and you don't receive those points, and they give you an invitation to apply, and you can't improve. And once you get an invitation to apply, you have 60 days to submit proof of everything that you've claimed in your profile. If you have lied in your profile and within 60 days, you cannot submit all the proof of everything you've claimed, you lose your invitation to apply and you lose your opportunity to apply for permanent residence. So you have to make sure you do your English or French exams, you do your education assessment for your foreign credentials. If you have foreign credentials, you prepare your Canadian credentials, right? You prepare your employer letter indicating that you have a NOC 0A/B position and you've worked there for full-time position for 12 months. You have that employer letter ready. Once you have all that ready, then create a profile and then you'll get an invitation to apply.
Wow, very good. Thank you. This question, what would be the best Ontario immigrant nominee program for students with postgraduate work permit of 3 years?
What would be the best provincial nomination program?
Yeah, for students with postgraduate permit of 3 years.
Honestly, it all depends on the person. I mean, if you're a tech person, then you apply in Ontario for their skilled position. I believe they have a tech nomination, route, right? You have to look at the province you want to stay in, because in Alberta, for example, they're looking for different type of skills, right? For Newfoundland and Labrador, they're looking for different type of skills. For, let's say, rural communities, they're looking for different skills. They're just looking, let's say you're someone who can do a certain NOC B position in a rural neighborhood or a northern community, then you can get a nomination from that and then you can apply for permanent residence, right? It all depends on the circumstances, but if you're someone who's on a 3-year postgraduate work permit, the easiest way for you to get permanent residence is just find a job that is at least a NOC B position. Just find a job like that. Just go into, let's say, a sales position, or let's say that gets you at least an assistant manager position. Or you try to apply for a job which is in a mid-tier or high-level job, right? Depends on the situation, but that is the best route to get the requisite experience to apply for permanent residence. Provincial nomination is one of the last routes you should look for if you can get a proper job for 12 months.
Thank you. One more last, I guess. If a spouse sponsorship application is still pending with Immigration Canada, and it's a visiting visa, will that have an impact, delay to the pre-existing application?
Sorry. So if you have an existing permanent residence spousal sponsorship application already submitted, okay,
yes.
and you have a visitor.
Someone gets a visiting visa.
Who gets a visiting visa?
I think the person. I guess. If it says that if you a spouse sponsorship application pending with Immigration Canada, and then it's a visiting visa, will that have an impact, delay on their pre-existing application? I guess if you want to sponsor someone, I guess.
It's kind of like a weird question, because that person, if they're here in Canada, they should already be here on a visitor visa, or let's say a work permit, to even be applying for that, right? If they are not in Canada and they want to apply for a visitor visa and they already have a pending application for a permanent residence, I'm going to say that most likely your visitor visa application is going to get denied, because obviously the immigration officer is seeing that you want to stay here permanently. And the whole point of a visitor visa is to come here temporarily. So if you're in a foreign country and you're applying for a visitor visa while there is already an application for permanent residence, it's going to be very hard to prove to the immigration officer that you only intend to come to Canada temporarily and you don't want to stay here permanently, right? So what I recommend, some people, they get married and let's say their spouse is abroad. Don't submit your PR application until your spouse is here. So that is kind of like a trick that a lot of people use. They get their spouse to come here on a visitor visa. Okay, once they're here, then they apply. Then let's say they get married here, and then they apply for their permanent residence application while they're here. Because at that point, then you're allowed to apply for permanent residence with a spousal sponsorship application within Canada, right? So that's what the route I would say to take if you're in that situation.
Okay, one more last, I guess now. What do you recommend to someone who can't seem to find, anyway, let me read the question well. What do you recommend to someone who can't seem to find high job on the NOC descriptions? a job title as a manager in it, but it's not necessarily a top level manager.
As long as your job is a manager job, it doesn't matter if it's high level or not. As long as you can show that you're doing management duties. So let's just say, again, we go to knock a position. Let's just say we go here and we type in, okay, manager. Let's just look at the duties of a manager. 1 second. Let's just say manager, okay? So as you can see, right? I mean, there's so many different type of managers, right? Construction manager, sales manager, retail manager, right? As long as you have a management position somewhere, okay, and that management position, you know, has duties such as, you know, hiring and or firing employees, you know, you're managing the schedules of people, you are doing training, right? As long as you're doing the duties of what a manager does, you can claim to be some sort of manager. And you're the person who's your manager, who's managing you, has to write a letter indicating that you are doing manager duties. So you are hiring and firing, you are making schedules, you're making orders, you know, you're doing all of the manager duties. And as long as you can get an employment letter that says that, then you should be fine. But yeah, always just go to this website, put it in, right? If let's say you're an assistant manager, let's say you're a retail supervisor, there you go, right? So a lot of people don't know, but if you're a supervisor, you're considered a knock B, right? So if you meet this description, so let's say knock 6211, let's go to that, retail sales supervisors, okay? Okay, let's say you are doing these duties. So you're supervising people, you're assigning sales work and duties, you're authorizing payments, you're selling merchandise to customer, you're resolving problems, you're maintaining inventory, you're preparing reports, you're hiring and training people, then you're good. You're knock B, and then you're in a good position. So just find a job which has some sort of duties like this, at least at the minimum, even if it's like at McDonald's. Just make sure you're at least a supervisor, and then you should be good.
Okay, cool. I think the question was answered. The person was saying that, can you pin your presentation somewhere? Was answered. Let me see if I did.
We have the presentation. I'll share it with whoever wanted. He shared it with Gary. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If someone does want it, yeah, they can. I believe, maybe if you want to send it out to everybody that's part of this, they can receive it. Or if you want more information, that's my contact information right there. So if you do go to my website, we are doing some work on changing the website. But if you go on my website, there's actually a tool for you to apply for, to schedule a consultation. So if you click schedule free consultation, okay, you can actually have my calendar there, and you can choose whatever day that you want. And if you, let's say you want to choose that day, you get my availability for that day. You can choose a time, and then you put the information, right? And then you're good to go. Oh, that's okay. But yeah, you put your information here, and then you can book a time to talk to me. So that's another way that you can also get a hold of me if you want more information.
Thank you, Abdallah. I guess I finished all the questions. And
I have a question. As we know, COVID has affected the process and timeframes for PR, citizenship, and everything. Yeah. Let's say for someone applying right now, is there a time frame change that you guys are aware of? How long should someone wait? Or is it the same thing? That's the question.
It depends. I would say book a time. Ask whoever is in that situation, just go to my website, schedule a consultation, and then we can talk, because I need to know the facts of what's going on. Because if it's someone, for example, who, let's just say they lost their job, let's say they were here and they had a 12 months work permit, and, in the middle of that, by 11 months, they lost their job because of COVID. Talk to me and maybe we can see how to look at that situation, because the government does have some exceptions that they've been introducing. So, for example, one of the programs that they've introduced is if you have been working in some sort of long-term care home or some sort of healthcare situation where you've been helping people as part of the COVID recovery, once you meet a certain criteria, you're eligible to get permanent residence. So there are different programs and exceptions that the government has introduced because of COVID. So definitely you want to schedule a consultation with me, explain what your situation is a little bit. And then at that point, I can discuss with you your different options.
Okay, thank you. There's another question that I got in one of the DMs. It's someone who, let's say they've been denied at the border to come to Canada, and then they go, let's say in the States, that's just an example, and then they come back. Remember when Trudeau said that they're accepting all immigrants, right? So now they don't have the right to go to court to actually get their PR. So they're just there pending, waiting for a decision, either to be deported or to stay. What are the dangers to be in that situation when your ID is expired? You're just waiting, your ID is expired, there's no decision being made, and because of COVID now, you don't even know what to do. So
what ID has expired?
They usually give this immigrants this big paper of ID before they go to court.
The refugee paper, right?
The refugee paper, yes.
Yeah, that indicates that you're applying for refugee status, right?
Yes, yes. But so what are the dangers to stay without basically an ID because that's expired? And what is something someone can do in a case like that?
I mean, I'm not sure what they mean when they say it's expired, because usually when you're given that paper, you're going through the refugee status. I mean, your refugee application. So if you're going through the refugee application, if it hasn't been denied, then you can stay in Canada until your refugee application has been denied. And even if it has been denied, you have the appeal process of going through the Refugee Appeal Division and then to federal court, and then maybe doing a pre-removal risk assessment, and then maybe even applying for humanitarian and compassionate grounds. So there's different methods for you to be able to appeal whatever decision it is. I don't think that your refugee status can expire per se. It's more so whether, it has been denied or not. Let's say you submitted your IDs like a passport while you're applying for your refugee, right, status. And if that document expires, you can't do anything about that, right? And usually, Canada can give you a travel document if you want to travel somewhere other than your home country, because obviously you can't go back there because you've applied for your refugee status, right? Refuge from that country. But if you want to travel somewhere, you can get you can apply for a travel document, and as long as they approve that travel document, you can travel with that Canadian travel document, right? Yeah, but I mean, if your passport expires, it expires. It is what it is. I mean, you can't do anything about that. And let's say you do receive refugee status, and let's say you don't have a valid passport because obviously it's expired, and Canada won't require you to go apply for an extension of your passport, because obviously for you to apply for a passport, you're going to have to go into the embassy of the same country that you're seeking refuge from. So they don't expect you to go and apply for a passport, which is for an embassy, which is you're seeking refuge from, right? So you can tell the immigration officers that my passport has expired. I'm scared to go to that embassy to apply to renew my passport for obvious reasons. So can you please, consider this situation? And usually they will continue processing the application even if your passport has expired because of that reason.
Okay, thank you.
There is one more question in the Q&A. How has COVID affected the process timeframe for PR, citizenship, etc.? Is Canada still going to be accepting lots of immigrants post-COVID? How about for African immigrants in particular?
So in terms of time frame, honestly, it all depends. Like a visitor visa will take less time to process than a permanent residence application. But because of COVID, let's just say double or triple any time that it was before. So if it used to take 12 months to apply for PR, it's going to probably take 2 to 3 years now. Okay. If it took 2 months to apply for a student visa, it's going to take probably 3-4 months, right? So there is a tool for you to check the time frame for applications. So you can let's say student permit processing time. If you Google that, you can check processing time for anything. Okay, so if you go to this tool, you can say, okay, I'm applying for family sponsorship. I'm sponsoring my spouse who is living outside Canada. Okay, I've already applied. Okay, on after December 2016. If you check processing times, it says 12 months, but I guarantee you it's going to be longer than that, right? So whatever you see here, add another year for permanent residence because of COVID. If it's student permits, add another 2 to 3 months. If it's work permits, add another 2 to 3 months. So that's what I would say, for that, for COVID time periods.
Thank you. I think one more question. Does express entry work when you're in Quebec?
So Quebec has different programs that they run. So if you are in Quebec, I would say talk to a lawyer who is in Quebec because they have different status. So you have to go through different methods to apply there. So I would say talk to a lawyer in Quebec, right, about that. I can't give a definite answer on that, but they have a different process because of their special status in Canada, right? And one more thing I forgot to answer in the last question, which was for someone who's coming from the African continent, like what are the processing times, etc. What I would say is if you're coming from the African continent, honestly, from anywhere in the South, just know that if you're submitting a temporary residence application, whether it's a student or a visitor or a work permit application, you have to have impeccable evidence that you will return back when you are done your visit, your work, or your studies. Because immigration officers, once they see an application from the African continent or the global South in general, their first thing is they want to deny it. And that sounds so bad, but unfortunately, that is the system we're in. Okay. I don't want to accuse them of anything, but I've heard many stories of lawyers just dealing with immigration officers, to be honest, who are just blatantly sometimes racist. Okay, so I'm not saying all immigration officers are, but just know that if you are applying for a temporary resident permit from the global South, you have to have an impeccable application. And even if you have an impeccable application, it might get denied. I'll give you an example. There was someone who had about like $500,000 in their bank account. They had properties, okay, in South Africa, for example, okay? And even though they were not, so one spouse was black, one spouse was white. And even that application was denied, right? So if you look at someone like that who is a professional, who has money in their account, forget about the color of their skin, but just they have the requisite money, they have the requisite properties in that country. Obviously, if someone has property in a country, they want to go back to maintain their properties. So their application is pretty good. Even if someone like that who has $500,000 in their account, they have properties, they are professionals, they can still get denied just because their application is from the global South. So you have to make sure that if you're applying from the global South, or if you're someone who originates from the global South, you have to have an impeccable application, or you are going to face hurdles applying for things, right? In the economic applications for economic permanent residence applications, you don't really see that there, because as long as you have the job, as long as you have the money in your account or a job offer, right? And as long as you have the language skills and the education history, there's no way they can discriminate against you because it's a point-based system, right? it's not really discretionary. But in the temporary resident field, it's very discretionary. To be honest, it's all based on how the immigration officer wakes up that morning. Oh, I like this person, I'll give them a permit. Oh, I don't like this person, I'm not going to give them a permit. It's very discretionary.
Good. One more last, which is kind of funny. So
Yes.
it says that what are some of the myths you heard from people?
Like this, what stories have I
What are
heard?
some of the myths you've heard?
Myth.
Myths about what
Yes.
though?
Immigration.
Of course, from immigration and so, yeah.
Myths. I mean, I don't know what to consider a myth, but honestly, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question, but just make sure, like I said, like you want to make sure you have the appropriate documents every time you apply, and you want to make sure that you're not getting frauded because I see a lot of people, unfortunately, from the African continent paying these agents. They pay them $10,000, to find them a job, to get them a job offer, and all these things. I had a recent client who paid $10,000 to an agent who supposedly had a job offer. And let me tell you, when I looked at what this agent told this client, they had created a whole letter that had a BMO letterhead and said like Richard Watson as the manager of BMO and a job offer and everything. Like this guy was good. And this lady unfortunately paid $10,000 and they got defrauded. So you have to be very careful. Okay, when someone, if you hear of a family member who's saying, oh, I have this agent who promised me, they found me a job in Canada, or there's this whole forum that's getting people jobs in Canada. I just have to pay $10,000 and then I get a job and then I get my permanent residence, so I get to come to Canada. Tell them, do not go there at all. I will tell you straight up. Okay. And if someone is charging you that amount of money, most likely they're just stealing from you. Okay. So real immigration lawyers or real immigration consultants who do great work, their fees are not going to be that expensive. Okay. Usually I would say a reasonable fee for permanent residents, is between like 3,000 to 5,000 legal fees, right? If someone is charging you in excess of that, don't go to them. There's enough lawyers out there or immigration consultants who can charge you less, right? Look at the history of whoever it is. And this is not, so when I say the next thing, don't take it as, if you're an immigration consultant in here, don't take it as a bad thing, but I would say stick to lawyers when you're doing immigration. If you go to immigration consultants, sometimes some immigration consultants, because they are not being overseen by the law society, they do some shady things. And I'm not saying that it's only them. A lot of lawyers do that too, right? So just be careful when you are using professionals who are not regulated by the law society, because you can end up in a situation where your money can be stolen, you're not getting services, and then you have no one to complain to. So just be careful. There's a lot of things going on in the immigration field about that.
Thank you very much. I will hand over to my co-moderator, Josh. Thank you very much, Abdallah, for your kind time.
Abdallah, I would like to thank you again so much for your time. That was very informative. I actually personally learned a lot myself because I'm actually starting the process for my own PR application. So that was actually very helpful as well. We thank you. I think you answered all the questions.
Great.
So you answered all the questions that people had here. So we really appreciate that. So people,
Right.
make sure you look at the contact info. If you're having any problems with your immigration or want some advice or anything, make sure you look up Abdallah and AAA Law Firm. So I'm sure people will contact you there. And also for people here who aren't a part of CARY, make sure you also do check out CARY's Instagram and get connected with people. We're all happy to help you connect as we have more of these sessions coming up. Yeah, and I think if that is all, Abdallah, thank you for your time. We appreciate everything you did for us today.
No problem at all. I'm really happy to have come here, and I love helping the community. So I mean, do not feel shy. I don't charge for my consultations. So just go on my website, and if you wanna schedule a consultation, you can schedule a consultation. I will speak to you and help you out, and then we can figure out a route that makes sense for you. All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for your attendance.
All right. Have a good day, everyone.